Hello, welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film Podcast. Today's guest is a truth seeker, an independent thinker, and somebody who has challenged mainstream narratives across health, science, spirituality. Known to many as Allegedly Dave, Dave Murphy has become a voice for those exploring life beyond the official story, questioning not just what we're told, but why we're told it. From personal awakenings to controversial ideas, Dave brings curiosity, conviction, and a whole lot of critical thinking. Whether you agree with him or not, he'll make you think twice. So, welcome to the show, Dave. Allegedly.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Thanks, Chris. I'm really glad to be here, actually, after all this trouble we've had.
Yes, we have had a little bit of fun trying to get connected, but we're connected now, and that's the main thing. Right, so first of all, I would like to know how you got the name Allegedly Dave. How did that come about?
Right, well, I started in the free man on the land world. And if you've spoken to anybody in that realm, they all sort of refer to themselves as commonly known as and such like. And I was being interviewed on a radio show, a guy called Vinny something. A guy from Australia. And I'd been on his show a few times before. And every time I had a different name. So I was Dave of the Murphy family, Dave Starbuck, and this time he said, "Okay, what do I call you? What do I call you this time?" He said, "You know what? I'm going to call you Allegedly Dave," and it just stuck after that. So,
well, that's good. No, it's good to have these funny little moments through life. It sees us on the right path.
yeah.
So, going back to the little conversation that we had before we started, you've got some dark stuff and you've got some light stuff. So which would you like to do first, sir?
Well, I guess it really follows the dark stuff first. Essentially, okay. Who's behind all the troubles that we're going through at the moment, and why. It's not going to be palatable for a lot of people, because there's some dark truths in here that that people aren't aware of.
All I will say is, can we just try and, but all I will say is, can we just bear in mind this is for YouTube, so try not to be too graphic.
Okay. So a simple way of putting it is, the alien invasion happened a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Happened thousands of years ago. We're all looking for the alien invasion, but it's already happened. And it was documented in an amazing book, the book that's been with humankind for the whole of recorded history. So it's a special book, and it's the Old Testament. I know everybody just puts that book aside, but it literally is a history of the past, present, and future, because the book's not finished yet. We're not quite to the end. We're near the end, but not quite at the end. But it tells you, even though it's been edited and hacked to pieces, there's still one line in it that tells you that angels basically came down and had sex with women to spawn their own bloodline, and essentially that bloodline is still here, and they hate humanity, and that's the war we're in. We're actually sorry,
I was going to say, is this the Anunnaki or whatever it's called, or is it tied to those?
The Anunnaki, the Anunnaki is just one name for them. Right, they go by many different names. Essentially, they are the old gods of all these pagan religions. So, the Greek gods are the same as the Roman gods, are the same as the Egyptian gods, the same as the Hindu gods, and so on and so on and so on. the worship of these gods hasn't stopped, from the ancient days. But yeah, they go by very many different names. I subscribe to the fact that the account in the Old Testament is the original account, and the book also talks about the Tower of Babel, which I believe was an event that occurred, and everybody split off with their own languages, taking away the same stories of these old gods, but again the languages changed, so they all came out with different names. The stories got sort of slightly
Becomes
changed
Chinese
by
whispers, doesn't it?
Chinese whispers, exactly.
Mm.
But they're the same characters. Now, if you read the account, now the account in the Old Testament has been again hacked out, and it's in the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch goes into great depth about these characters and what they did, and these fallen angels, they taught man technology. Yeah, so they gave man technology, um, but they were punished for it, and I think it was 70 generations. Now, depending on how long you think a generation is, they were locked away for 70 generations, and they were going to be allowed to be freed. Again, if you depending on how you count a generation, it could be that they were freed somewhere between the end of the 17th century or 1700s to the beginning of about the 1900s, which coincides with the explosion of technology that we've experienced, in a very, very short time.
I've also heard the theory where we got a lot of our wisdom as well from things like doing DMT and the ayahuasca, that kind of thing, and getting all that wisdom and knowledge that way. Do you buy into any of that at all?
I agree that you can get it through that route, but the route to that information is essentially hijacked by entities. So if you go into that realm using ayahuasca or even DMT, yes, you can get to that information, but there are entities there waiting for you, and they will tell you things. They might tell you the truth, but again, when you look into the book of, it tells you who those fallen angels called the Nephilim. When they die, their spirits can't go anywhere, so they're stuck on Earth as disembodied spirits. And those are the entities, those are the spirits, those are the ghosts that you would interact with when you go into that realm through these psychedelic drugs. If we get into the light side of this, I'll tell you about what that realm is about and how you can get there naturally without any drugs. But essentially, that is what's going on in this world. We're in a war. We've been at war for the whole of recorded history, but for the most part, the ordinary humans have no idea that we're at war. Because the enemy has been very, very clever, because they have to move very slowly. They are very small in number, and so in order for a very small contingent to eradicate a much larger foe, they have to move very slowly, very baby steps, boiling frog styly, so that any changes don't alert the masses. Because if the masses sort of wake up to it and turn on them, they're finished. So that's what's happened.
How much government
So
knows about this? People in high places.
they are government. Government
Right.
is
Okay. Okay. So the people that we see, like the players, then should we say, how aware are they of what's going on, or are they just submissive slaves?
well. Again, think of compartmentalization.
Mm.
It's a pyramid structure. you've got the leadership, the ones who know everything, right at the top, right? And the further you go down, the less you know. And then right at the bottom are the ordinary men and women of the earth. But yeah, so if you get to the level of the politicians, well, they're driven by money and power. Yeah, they don't necessarily know why they're doing it. They're just following the money and the power, So, but when you go a little further up, you get to those who are in secret societies. So again, they're a pyramid structure as well. So, you might start in the lower degrees and think you're just doing humanitarian work, but as you progress up the chain, you find out more and more about what you're really doing, and then you get into the powerful families, right? And then you get in, above that are the 13 most powerful families. And then above that, now you're going into the spiritual realm, because, as the New Testament, which I don't regard very highly, basically says, we're not fighting flesh and blood. We're fighting, entities, something that's not quite part of this world. So, yeah. Going back to the beginning. Essentially, these Nephilim and the fallen angels behind them hate humans, and this was an attempt to destroy humanity by corrupting the bloodline, and so it almost worked. Virtually everyone on Earth had been corrupted by this bloodline, and it came down to one man left. The Most High basically waited until it came down to one last original human, and then wiped the earth clean, essentially. So that was the story of Noah's Ark. So Noah was the last one left, but Noah's wife was corrupted. So Noah's children had this Nephilim DNA in them. And a week before the flood, Noah had to find wives for his 3 sons. So the only women that were available were corrupted ones. So the Nephilim DNA got the other side of the flood through the DNA of the children, which is why if you look in the post-flood part of Genesis, you'll find the Most High is basically sifting the bloodlines. He's choosing particular bloodlines and saying, okay, you have to marry this person, and if you marry this person, your children aren't going to be chosen, and so on and so on. So you get a very particular line of people. So it goes from out of Noah's 3 sons, Shem is chosen, not because he's special. It's because his bloodline is closer to Adam's, the original man, than his 2 brothers. And then out of Shem's 5 sons, Arphaxad is chosen, and so on and so on and so on. And every now and again, you'll get a chosen one, and he's giving special instructions. So you've got somebody called Eber, where you get the word Hebrew from. Okay, and then it skips a few generations, and then the next chosen one is Abraham, and Abraham, well, he was told to marry his half sister, Sarah. And Sarah was barren, though, so she couldn't have children. So she gave Abraham one of her handmaids, an Egyptian woman. And the offspring, Ishmael, he wasn't chosen because the handmaid was Egyptian and it wasn't part of the bloodline. So Ishmael wasn't chosen, but when Sarah had a baby in her old age, Isaac was chosen. Right, so when Isaac had children, something new happened, something different happened. He had twin boys. And in the firstborn, Esau, all the fallen angel DNA was concentrated in him. Right? Because you'll find that the description of Esau essentially matched the description of the Nephilim. He was wicked, cunning, warlike, violent, all that sort of thing. And the other twin boy, Jacob, it was totally absent. He'd gone all the way back to the original blueprint of Adam. So now you have these two representatives, man in Jacob and the fallen angels or the Nephilim in Esau. And that is the war that we've been in ever since. So you've got the children of Esau who ended up mixing with all the nations apart from Jacob's and the children of Jacob. And that's what's going on today. We've got two factions fighting, and everyone else is collateral damage.
So what is the end game then for these people or for these entities then? What is New World Order?
The end game of the agenda, which is the Nephilim agenda, is essentially to exterminate the race of man and replace them on Earth. Okay. However, the agenda of the fallen angels, on the other hand, is to exterminate all life on Earth. They don't even care about their children. They're going to betray them. That's their plan because they're wicked, essentially, and they don't begin.
Yeah, so essentially then they're just trying to spark out divine creation, as in man, because we're God made in God's likeness.
Yes, indeed. So going back to why this started, it was because now this is a bit of speculation, that I've pieced together from looking at other sources and stuff. But it seems that this civilization isn't the first. And there are previous civilizations that were wiped out completely. We call it Tartaria, but it's not to do with that area on the map that said Tartary, whatever. I think it was a worldwide civilization, but essentially what I pieced together is the previous civilization to this one was governed by an angel. So it was, there was, and I think people are starting to talk about this as well, that maybe this technology, this architecture wasn't built by human hands. It was built by angelic hands. But I'm not going there yet. But so this previous civilization was governed by an angel, and it fell into wickedness. And the Most High decided to wipe it clean and start again. And when he did start again, this time he created Adam to be the new governor of Earth, again, in his likeness, in his image. Obviously, the Most High doesn't have a physical look. I think he gave Adam his mind, his mindset. Right. So Adam was going to be the immortal governor of Earth. But the angel that was the previous governor didn't like it. He said he was told to worship Adam as you would worship the Most High. And he refused. He said, I was here first. I'm more powerful than this mud man you've created. I'm more splendid. I've got more power. Yeah. I'm not going to bow down to this human. And he started this rebellion. So he's actually after destroying everything, just like the Most High destroyed everything before. But his children have been tasked to wipe out the race of man. Well, hopefully that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It's a lot to take in, but it does make sense. Yeah. So how do we combat this?
But that's the story. Well, the book is very clear about what happens in the end days. Now, there's a lot of people who regard the New Testament. I don't, because what the New Testament does, it redirects the story. If you read the whole of the Bible, as I did, I read it 3 times back to front. What you realize is in the so-called Old Testament, there's a story building for thousands and thousands of years, and that goes into detail. So and so begat so and so begat so and so, and all this, lots and lots of detail. And then you get to a point, it goes, stop. It's not about all this anymore. Forget about all that. It's now about this guy, and so it redirects the story away from the real story, and gets you talking about this guy gets nailed to a stick.
The New Testament is pretty much like today's mainstream media.
Pretty much. You've got the alternative media giving out the truth of what's really going on, and you've got this mainstream that's trying to redirect everybody's attention elsewhere, so that they don't look at what's really going on. So that's essentially it. So the Old Testament, when it talks about the last days, it leaves certain markers that you obviously can't give you dates or anything, but it will give you markers to look for. And one of the markers is essentially that the Israelites, the children of Jacob, were going to go into a period of slavery and affliction, the worst ever conceivable slavery and affliction, for 400 years. And when that 400-year period ends, that will be the last days. Okay, so the description of that slavery and affliction is in Deuteronomy 28, from about 50 to 68. 15 to 68, the 68th verse. And it describes this horrible period and horrible slavery and everything. Now that matches only one time in history, and that's the slaves who went to America, basically America and the Caribbean. Matches it exactly. Okay, now if that's the case, then that slavery started in 1619, right? August 21st, 1619. So it ended August 21st, 2019. And sure enough, as soon as we hit that date, all hell broke loose. I don't know if you recall that half of America was on fire, the other half was underwater. Yeah. We had all sorts of incredible weather events. We had locusts appearing in places that never saw locusts before. And then 7 months later, we had the whole earth locked down. Right? So it's I don't think it's no accident. It's literally this end of slavery, and then all hell breaking loose. The next line, because this all comes from a line in Genesis. It's when the Most High speaks to Abraham and says, "Know for a surety that thy seed shall be in slavery and affliction for 400 years." And the next line is, and that nation, the nation that put them into slavery, which is essentially a worldwide nation now, that nation shall I judge, and afterwards they're going to leave with great substance. So right now we are in the judgment of the nations, right? And does it not feel like the world is being judged at the moment?
It certainly feels like something's going down.
Yeah. So I mean, you can take it or leave it, but I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the Old Testament and seeing what the book is saying come to pass.
Well, we've now got World War III on our doorstep,
which is also mentioned in the Old Testament. So we're okay. So I even think that Donald Trump plays into it as well, because
do you think he's goodie or baddie?
Donald Trump, he's a baddie. He's part of the system.
Yeah,
you don't ever get to be president unless you're part of the club, and even the Muggles are starting to see that there is this system out there that as soon as you become famous or you got the potential to become famous, you get brought into a club and you work for them now. Yeah. And you don't get fame, power, and money
Not without
unless
selling your
you're part of
soul.
the club, you know. So yeah, we've been living in Disneyland. You know, we think the world is just so, and everybody is on an equal footing. You know, so you know if you don't progress in this world, then it's down to you. There's something wrong with you. No, this system is rigged against you, and you only sort of progress in this world if you're part of their club. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. Yeah.
Funny
So
handshakes and all that malarkey.
exactly, funny handshakes. Yeah, the good signs. You know the
And it just,
yeah. If you now, you know, I shouldn't have done that because somebody's going to take a still and go, look, see, he's a Freemason. You know.
oh dear. Well, I look at that as a badge of one of these days to be called that, because it means we're obviously on the target somewhere.
Yes. Well, you can see, you know, if you do any talk about any truth, you'll get censored. You even said at the beginning, you know, don't talk about certain things because it'll be squashed. If what we're talking about means nothing, they wouldn't go to trouble
Oh no, of course
to
not.
censor us, right? No, nobody's censoring. You know, the people who are talking about Elvis is still alive, you know, because nobody cares about that. But it's the things we talk about that they will clamp down on because you know we're too close to the target there. It's funny though. I was looking at the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Have you heard of them?
The Emerald Tablets of what?
Of Thoth or Thoth?
No, I can't say that I have, if I'm honest.
Okay, so there are these tablets that are engraved in these um, green tablet, they're green sort of stone like emerald stones, and they're thousands of years old. Now, tablet 8 tells of an invasion again of a serpentine type people, and they have technology that looks like man. So these creatures can impersonate humans,
So
and what they
shapeshift.
do with that technology to shapeshift essentially. I'm not sure if it's shapeshifting, but because one of the phrases is serpent headed when the glamour is lifted. Yeah, glamour basically means magic. Um, so it sounds like a technology, like a holographic technology.
Mm.
They can where they can look more like humans. Um, and you know what? Even today, we're seeing that. You can find videos of again celebrities and newscasters and people in the club um, where the glamour starts to drop, and you see either I don't know their faces start to morph or their eyes become serpentine and whatever.
That's really
Again,
funny
that's
you
when the
say that, though.
glamour is lifted.
It's really funny you say that, because as you're doing that, because of the internet connection, your face is going. So you're one of them. You're one of them.
No, it's not me.
Sorry, I had to get
But
that in there.
it basically says it describes that these entities have crept into the positions of power, and they kill the leaders and replace them, and you know uh, essentially that I think one of the phrases in it is that only by sound can their faces be seen, and powerful men on the good side found out that there's a word that you can teach to men that if they say it, the glamour is lifted, and you can see them for who they are. And mankind was taught this word, and we were able to kick them out. But then the one of the last lines is, "But they weren't destroyed, and they're coming back." And I believe that account on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth is about that previous civilization, how it descended into wickedness. And it was a warning that they weren't destroyed totally. They're still around, but they're coming back. And this is what I think has actually happened. These people, these entities have crept into the positions of power, and we're now at the end game. Now in the end game that all bets are off, and now they're going hell for leather to utterly destroy us.
Is this why we're
It still
having
has
the
to be very slow though.
geoengineering?
Geoengineering. They're killing all the crops. They're killing all the feed animals. They're literally going hell for leather to exterminate us without even worrying about hiding themselves anymore. You know, because they believe they've dumbed us down to such an extent that you know they feel there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, we've got news for them.
Yeah. But at the same time, I believe the Most High is also working on our behalf, because I believe the top echelons of this system are dying off. Yeah, we've already seen, you know, several key members of their club just shuffling off the mortal coil. You know, the Queen was one. Now I believe she died at least 4 years before they announced it to us. I think, you know, Charlie Sausage Fingers is also gone.
Oh, do you?
You know, because all we're seeing is a lot of oh yeah, I think we've been seeing a lot of his body doubles and stuff going out there. And there's at least 5 of them. Yeah, the sausage fingered one is just one. Sometimes you'll see him without sausage fingers, or you'll see him hugging people. he doesn't hug people.
Also,
but none of that.
With regards to things like TV appearances, with CGI and AI and all that, no, you don't even need the body double as such, do you? Obviously, for public events, you do, but for TV or speeches, you don't.
No, you don't. I think they showed us that. I can't remember what year it was when they did a Queen speech where she ended up breakdancing or something. But at the beginning of the Queen speech, it looked like the Queen, and then, you know, they were showing us that they can completely fake, you know, a broadcast. So yeah, you're right. We don't know. Well, who's watching television anymore?
Well, yeah,
anyone.
Unfortunately, there's probably still too many. But yeah, but you're right. They did exactly the same thing for 9/11, didn't they? There was only 3 cameras that showed it live, and in all of those shots, there was no plane seen.
I was actually at 9/11, and yeah, so I was almost in it, because I turned down a job in Lehman Brothers on the 40th floor of Tower 1 a month before, and I took a job across the water in Hoboken, like literally right across the water from it, and so I watched the whole thing from a pier. Now I saw the second plane. I don't know. Yeah, people are saying no, there were no planes. Well, we saw a second plane. It was from our perspective, it was flying low over the Statue of Liberty, and it from where I was seeing it flew behind the building, and then we saw the explosion. So we didn't see the plane go out the other end, so we just assumed the plane crashed into the building.
Is there a possibility that could have been a hologram?
It's a possibility, but the sound was right as well, because, you know, there's all obviously a delay between seeing it and the sound, and the sound seemed to come from the right direction. So I don't know what to tell you. It looked like a plane to us.
Okay, well, that's very interesting to hear and get an eyewitness, because that's Because I know they do have amazing technology.
Actually, they probably do, but I have a picture on my website on the, I guess, About Me page, and it's the view that I had, from when it was going off, and you'll be able to see that, I had a sort of open view of the whole thing. And so yeah, we saw a plane. Don't know what to tell you.
Oh no,
People got really annoyed about me saying I saw a plane.
Well, no, I don't think people should get annoyed, really. I think that's stupid. But I do, the only thing that I kind of question, which the pilots, well, obviously not those pilots question, and that is that a plane couldn't fly that fast, that low, at that speed, because the air density is just too thick. They were saying it was going full pelt, which is about 500 and something odd miles per hour, that low. Well, that's just physically impossible, according to the experts.
I think it would be impossible for the Pentagon plane, because that was literally, a few feet off the ground. There's all sorts of air sort of cushion effect. It's called ground effect, which would make that incredibly difficult.
Mm.
But flying a jet into a tower that was almost 600 feet, 700 feet, maybe higher than that. I don't know. But yes, that's definitely possible. But I would suspect that those planes were remote controlled anyway. They weren't actually full of passengers or anything. But yeah, we definitely saw a plane, going into that building. But yeah, as I said, people were so sort of wedded to this no planes theory that came out, that they get really annoyed when I say it and call me a liar and stuff like that. But yeah,
people do get married. They're very, once they get this belief, that's it. It's like swearing at them, isn't it? But don't forget, people, the word believe has the word lie in it, because my opinion is, if you have to believe something, then it's probably not true. Because if it's true, you don't need to believe in it. It just is.
yeah, no. Now that event actually brings me into the light side of what I had to say.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason for these public ritual, to get everybody's mind focused on one particular event, because everyone's mind is focused on it. It means that they can use that power to actually bring in what they want to have happen. Now, that introduces this idea that we have an enormous amount of power in this world. And we do. We have the power to shape our experience of this world. Now, I believe the Nephilim do not have this ability. I said that the Most High gave us his mind. Well, that included the creative ability.
Yeah, they can only shape
this world. Exactly. So in order to have their agenda come in, they use us. They channel our power into bringing out what they want to have happen, and they do that with these public rituals. So what is this power? This power we have is, as I said, to be able to shape our experience on this earth. So essentially, we co-create this earth, right? So we can literally have any experience we really want to have happen in this world, just by willing it into existence. I talk about the fourth dimension because we're talking about things that we can't conceptualize yet. We don't have the level of consciousness to actually understand it. So the way I understand it is by calling it the fourth dimension. So I have a little demonstration, as it were, to figure out what the fourth dimension is from where I stand. If you imagine I have a cube, I'm holding a cube in my hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a third dimensional object. If I cut that cube in half and look at its cross section, now I'm looking at a flat plane. Right. So we've gone down to 2 dimensions. If I take that flat plane, cut it in half, and look down its cross section, now I'm looking at a line, one dimension. All right. So if I take that line, cut it in half, look at its cross section, now I'm looking at a point, which is 0 dimensions. Right. So we can figure out what the fourth dimension is by going up again and extrapolating what the fourth dimension is. So if you a line is essentially an infinite number of points all merged together into one thing going off in a direction. Okay. A flat plane is an infinite number of lines all merged together into one thing going off in a different direction. A cube is an infinite number of flat planes all stacked up together and merged into one thing and going off in a different direction. So the fourth dimension must be an infinite number of cubes all merged together into one thing going off in another direction. What do you think that direction is?
Down.
I'd say time. Right.
Okay.
So because this power pack thing,
but isn't time a man-made construct, sir?
Okay, it's not man-made construct. We see the passing of events, so something is happening. But there is a man-made conception of time. But the point is you might call it changeability, change.
Okay.
Right, because this didn't just pop into existence. Right, there was a time when this was something else, and it became this, and eventually this is going to become something else. Okay,
so it's almost like the evolutionary.
My example I give is kind of. So this example makes it a bit clearer. If you imagine a wooden chair, okay, so that wooden chair is a 3-dimensional slice of a 4th-dimensional object. So what's that 4th-dimensional object? So imagine a flash of light. Maybe it came from the sun, right? And that flash of light gets absorbed by a leaf. And that leaf helps a tree to grow. And eventually somebody will cut down that tree and turn it into lumber. And then maybe somebody will have an idea for a chair, take that lumber, turn it into a chair. And that's where we interact with it. For, let's say, maybe 30 years, it's a chair. But eventually that chair will break and will end up in a landfill where over the course of time, that wood will break down into a liquid. And then that liquid will break down to a gas. And maybe that gas will ignite and turn back into a flash of light. So that whole process is that 4th-dimensional chair. Almost, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm following you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, so the whole of reality is like that. If you imagine this world is like a series of 3D dioramas, which are static, just like a 3D film strip, yeah? And the next diorama is just slightly changed from the previous one, and so on and so on and so on. And
like
they're all merged together. Sorry?
Like stop motion. Just individual pictures that create a
exactly
moving image. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but all in 3D. Yeah. So that's this whole world. Series of moments, static moments, which are going by so quickly that we feel it's like smooth movement. Yeah. And that's it. It's all merged together into one thing, all happening all at once in this other realm that is beyond time and space. Okay. And we have access to that place. We have access to that realm. In fact, half our time is spent there. Okay.
Dream.
So that's one route into it.
Where do you think those messages come from? Like dreams, even when you get like a ta-da moment, where do you think that develops? Like What role do you think dreams, intuition, or synchronicity play in our lives? And do you think that they're messages? And if so, who from and where from? That was my question.
Right. Well, if you follow on my example there, remember the whole of time and space is merged into one object, all happening all at once. Okay. So it's in one place, all in a single moment. Okay. But that's in this other realm that we have access to. So you have access to the whole of time and space, every piece of information that ever was, ever will be, yeah, ever is. Okay. You've got access to that. So included in that whole of time and space is your entire lifetime. Yeah, everything that you know, everything that you were is also in there. Okay. And you can access that. Okay. Well, you access all that in, all the time because it's familiar to you. You know what that life is about. Okay. So there are many sources of that information. You can go and ask it, where are my keys? Okay, where are my keys? I've lost my keys. Where are my keys? Well, in that timeline, you know where you put those keys, or when you know where they were dropped, and you can ask, and it will, your subconscious will tell you, oh yeah, I left them in the fridge when I opened it the other day.
Well, for as often as I'm losing my keys, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but dreams, for instance, when you dream, a lot of that time is you're picking out moments from your past, present, and future. Okay, and then when you bring them over to your conscious mind tries to string them together into some kind of narrative. Now I had confirmation of that when I was actually writing that part of my talk. Something really weird happened. This guy called Kai contacted me on Facebook just as I'm writing this thing. Now, I have to go back into the past here. When I was about 16, I had a dream. And the dream was I was walking down the street with two children, my children. And one was an older boy called Kai and a younger daughter called Jade. So I woke up and I thought, oh, I know what my children are going to be called. Right. So I was really excited. And then later on, I met my girlfriend who became my wife, and we moved in together, and we had some friends over, and I told them my dream, and I didn't know that the woman that came over, that she was pregnant, and she had a boy, and she called him Kai. I was like, oh, stole my name, I was like, oh, it's okay, no big deal. And then the same thing happened to my brother. My brother came over with his girlfriend. The dream came out. I didn't know that she was pregnant. She had a boy. She called him Kai. I was like, oh, no, I can't use the name now. Right. So then I had my daughter. So she had to be called Jade. And then my son was called, I had to call him Connor instead because I can't use Kai anymore. So
not even as a middle name.
I was a bit sort of, well, no, it was gone. I couldn't use it. It was, but I was a bit disappointed because I thought, hang on, I thought I was going to have an older boy first. But yeah, anyway, that's how it worked out. But as I said, when I was writing that bit about dreams, Kai, my friend's son, he contacted me out of the blue. I haven't spoken to him since he was about 8 years old. Yeah. He contacted me and he told me that basically his dad died when he was about eight or so, and he told me, I love my dad, but he was a very stern man. I used to love coming around to your house and playing with Jade, and you used to teach us stuff like judo and things, and really enjoyed it. And I've always thought of you as my dad.
Oh, sweet.
So the point is, though, when I was dreaming when I was 16, I must have picked up on that moment and integrated it into a story that had an older boy called Kai
so as my son figure.
Because he said yes, but but my conscious mind just put it together into a narrative that made sense to me. And yes, Kai is older than Jade, you know. So yes, I did have two children, a boy and a girl, and but this Kai said he was my son. So yes, all the information was correct. It was just jumbled up in the wrong order, but that's what dreams are. That you can go down your entire timeline and pick out information, or maybe even other people's timelines and pick out information. It also tells you that what deja vu is. Deja vu isn't just that you've been a certain place before. I've had it where I thought, oh, I've been here before, but then I know what's going to happen next as well. Right. So it's not just, this recognition of somewhere. No, it's this recognizing a particular experience in a place. So that would also come out, go. You can only focus on one place at a time.
What would you say the interpretation of flying in dreams is?
Well, I'm not a dream interpreter, but
because that seems to be quite common for me.
You could be picking up the consciousness of a bird for all you know, because you've got access to everything. You've got access to everything. But there was another aspect of what you asked earlier on is, okay, the flash of inspiration. Now I had a cannabis journey, right, where I could literally hear and follow 6 different conversations in the room at once. And it was amazing. And I had the thought, I wonder if everybody else is doing this as well, but don't know it. And the moment I had that thought, I had an experiment I could use, about, a whole experiment I could do. I had the results of the experiment. I had the implications of those results. I had what I would write about those implications. I had a talk that I could do based on the implications of that. So I had the whole thing, right, wrapped up in a package the moment I conceived of the thought. So all I had to do next was step through time and actually experience it, but I already knew what it was, right? So that was a glimpse into the world without time or space. And so when you think of something, when you imagine something, that's you shifting your focus from the 3rd dimension, right, where we are right now, to the 4th dimension. Okay. So if you were imagining something, right, maybe you'd be staring up at the ceiling, right? Staring up at the ceiling, maybe you're imagining a car you want to build, okay? While your eyes are pointing at the ceiling, are you seeing the ceiling?
Yeah,
well, you're not, are you?
It depends how good your visualization skills are, I guess. Yeah, the daydream mode,
right?
Really.
Yes, you're staring at something, but you're not seeing what it is you're staring at. You're seeing something else, something you're imagining, right? It's because now your 3D senses are dulled, are suppressed, and you're looking at something in another realm with different eyes. Okay. And the same with your hearing. When you're in that mode, right, where your focus is in the 4th dimension, somebody could say, Chris, and then you might wake up and go, oh, what? I didn't. Yeah, because your hearing's suppressed, right? Your cognition of what's the focus is somewhere else, listening with different ears in a different realm. Okay. And that realm is where all new ideas come from, right? So it's also the prototyping place. So when you have an idea for something, you prototype, you build it there with your mind. It's going to appear here in the 3rd dimension eventually. I give the example of there's a film, Star Trek: The Voyage Home, okay, where Scotty ends up going into the past, and they need something that doesn't exist in 1986 called transparent aluminium. Okay, so Scotty finds an engineer, and he teaches that engineer the formula for transparent aluminium that he learned at school. Right. So as he's teaching this engineer, Bones basically says, "Aren't we changing the timeline? Right? We shouldn't be doing this." He goes, "How do we?" Scotty goes, "How do we know that this guy didn't invent transparent aluminium?" And he went, "Oh, well, yeah, of course." So hang on a second. If this engineer invents transparent aluminium because Scotty taught it to him, but Scotty learned it because he learned it at school because this guy invented it, where did the information come from?
That's it. It's funny because so carry on.
I was going to say it came from the fact that the Most High is doing it all, because we're just little specks, little instances of the Most High looking at the here and now. All right. So if you conceive of something, it's actually the Most High conceiving of it through us. So that's where, just like when I had the idea for an experiment, and when I just thought of this idea, the whole thing appeared fully formed. Right. But now I had to go through time to get to it. Right. But here's the really freaky part, though. Like, because this obviously is just a film, it was a screenwriter, right, a guy called Nicholas Meyer, who invented the concept of transparent aluminium. In 2013, it became a reality because he had the idea for it. As soon as you have an idea for something, now there's a probability of it existing in the future. And the more you think about it, the more probable it becomes until it arrives here. Yeah?
I remember seeing a clip with Michael Jackson, and they were talking about songwriting, and somebody mentioned a song. It might have been Billie Jean. I can't remember what it was. And they said, "What made you go with that song?" And he said, along the lines of, "Well, if I didn't do it, Prince would have had it." It's like these are gifted to you, and you can choose whether or not you embody that gift and turn it into a creation, into reality. And so it's the same kind of thing, that obviously your thoughts create reality. Like you said earlier, everything that you pick up at some point was a thought in somebody's head, and then it became a thing. And so I totally buy what you're saying there.
Right. But think of it a little more here. If I had an idea for something, right, all of a sudden, as soon as I have that idea, it now appears in the future as a probability of happening in reality. Right? And the more I think of it, the more probable it's going to be. But now that it's in the future, now it's available for everyone else to see it. All right. So that is exactly why when you get inventors come up with something, you find there's 2 or 3 other inventors working on exactly the same thing. Right. And so if that inventor didn't get it, well, somebody else is going to get it. It's going to appear because somebody conceived of it, and now it exists somewhere in the future.
But the scary thing, the flip side of that, which scares me, is that could be for negative as well. So if you're somebody that's always in a negative mindset and, for fuck's sake, this is always you're potentially creating that for you further down the line.
Yep, exactly. So, and this also explains why the agenda, the cabal, they do the things they do, because they have to get us to agree to what they do. Because if they say, okay, if you decided that you wanted me to break my leg, right, and you're wishing, I wish he breaks his leg, yeah, what are you focusing on?
I suppose pain.
You're focusing on a broken leg, aren't you?
So
guess who's going to get the broken?
Yeah,
exactly, because you're literally calling it in for yourself because you're focusing on it. Yeah. So whatever you put into this world, you're going to get it. You're going to get it back at you. So what they do is rather than force anything on us, they'll ask us if we want it. They might do it in a very tricky way, but they'll ask us if we want it. And if we don't say no, then it's going to come into existence, but it's not going to come back on them because we asked for it. Yeah.
Much like the old, you know what, do you want this or would you like to keep your job?
Yes, exactly. Or would you like to keep your life to start with? Because that was the first thing. It's gonna kill you if you don't get it. It's gonna kill you. You better get it. You know. So yeah, they always have to ask us because they don't want the. I don't like using the word, but karma, because you know that's what it is. Whatever you put out is going to come back at you. So they go round the houses and get you to ask for it first. You know?
Absolutely. So do you meditate?
I don't meditate because meditation in the Eastern mystical culture is essentially emptying your mind and essentially opening the door for something else to come in and take residence.
But isn't that going back to the nothingness though? Isn't the idea of emptying your mind is so you can go to that place of nothingness, which is where everything comes from? Isn't that the principle behind it?
I go to a place of stillness and quiet with an intention in mind rather than of no intention.
Right.
That's different. It's quite contemplation rather than emptying the mind.
Okay. Because I would love to meditate, but I've never been able to do it. I get bored so quickly. Like within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, it's at the door. You know, I just can't get into that zone. Now I have done breath work, Wim Hof breathing, like, and that has had some incredible. Doing that after like 3 rounds of that, your whole body is literally vibrating with energy, like and that to me is better than meditation, and it's good for you.
Right. Well, I think if you spend sort of half an hour to an hour of just quiet stillness, right? Don't think about meditating, yeah, but just stillness and quiet, and you know, think about an issue that you're dealing with, or something you need to figure out, or whatever it is. Quiet contemplation. So go into that stillness, you know, that place where you can cut off what you're seeing, what you're hearing, whatever, right, and just stay in that stillness for half an hour to an hour with this thought in mind. Well, where are my keys? You know, whatever, right? At the end of it, you'll literally get this rush of information and stuff come out of the stillness, and you know, it'll have the answer to what you're looking for.
That's perfect, and I think that's a lovely place to end. It's about intent. It's about intent, and just that's brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. I know we've had our struggles over this podcast, but your picture now is as clear as it's ever been on this whole show. So there's the picture I'm going to take for the thumbnail. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. It's been a pleasure to meet you about 3 times on and off. And I'd love to have you back on again at some point to talk about other stuff if you'd be up for that.
Absolutely. Just give me the shout.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Everyone watching this, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned from it. Go and check out Allegedly Dave's website. I will put it in the link below. Take care, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.